So the guiding assumptions behind this presentation is we try really hard to work with native plants as opposed to non-native, but we're not snobs about it. I mean, I'll admit we have peach trees, apple trees, all the blah, 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 and roses and all that kind of thing. We believe that a weed is just a misplaced plant, okay? Most of the things that we have found out that we didn't like at the beginning, we found out that we like. There's a concept in Christianity, and it was funny because when we first started talking about making this presentation, I was like, oh, do we want to get into the whole Christianity thing? And then we came to one of these meetings, and you offered a prayer, and I was like, we're good. So if you look at Roman Christianity, the empire, the concept was what? Make slaves, beat people up, and subjugate the earth, rip it apart, and bring it under control, right? The Celts were very different. They believed in there's a humanity that goes through all people, and there's a connection with the earth. And that was the way they dealt with Christianity. And so we've kind of been moving kind of more away from we're going to have to plow our fields and do all that kind of thing, to what is the earth trying to tell us? And finding the joy in St. Francis of Assisi wrote hymn, All Creatures of Our God and King. Lift up your voice and with us sing Alleluia. And it's like, yes, that's what we want to do. And we'll be talking about that. There's also a professor out of Rhode Island. He's retired. His name's Doug Talamy. You can go on homegrownnationalpark.org. And his concept is if everybody took some of their yard that was to lawn and made it into pollinator space, 10 feet by 10 feet, native plants, that if everybody east of the Mississippi would do that to 10 feet by 10 feet, you would have a national park that is bigger in area than the five biggest national parks in the national park system combined. So you're talking Yellowstone, Yosemite, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a lot of land, right? And why are we excited about that? Because pollinators are just cool. Pollinators include everything from bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, birds, carrion beetles, just all sorts of ants, and the wind. And so as we try to move to that type of gardening, then things become basically more sustainable, and we're hearing a lot of talk about sustainability and all that kind of thing. So this presentation, that's kind of our guiding assumptions. Anything else?
The concepts behind what we've been doing here is looking for the messages that our Creator is sending it to us through the creations. That everything is declaring that there is a God that's is the creator of everything. There's all kinds of scriptures you can find for that, and I won't spend a lot of time on those. But this is a quote from John Scotus Erigena, is how he says it. He was a Celtic Christian philosopher, and their philosophy was that everything is sacred. And we live in a state of forgetfulness. We've forgotten. We have some kind of soul forgetfulness, that we're sacred, that the earth is sacred, that everything around us is infused with God living through it all. So I've started to, and we both have started to try to look for the sacred in the things around us, whether it's creeping Charlie that's taking over the front yard, or whether it's a cat, which Dave, I haven't got any word with that. It's
not a fan of feral cats.
So when Jesus spoke, he was always talking about mountains, and the bread, and the lilies, and the
mustard seeds.
Mustard seeds, and all of that. There was one time I was really busy, and was before David and I met, but I was working on a book launch and I was worn out, I was exhausted, I'd been on technology all day long working on this thing. And I was stressed out, so I would go outside and I'm walking around on our property and just meditating, got into kind of a gratitude state, and the more grateful I got, it's like there was a beacon going through it. All of nature saying, I love you, come to me, I can heal you. I love you, come to me, I can heal you. And I just started to feel peaceful again, and my headache went away, and I felt better. And nature has this ability to convey this loving message from our Creator through everything, and it's a healing thing. So our objectives here today is to talk about being good stewards of the earth, and that our Creator is wanting us to partner with Him in taking care of nature and partner with the earth itself. For me, it's just become kind of a quest to hear and see the Prince of Peace in nature so that I can receive the peace. The world's kind of crazy right now. There's all kinds of people that are very contentious and all these other things. And I've really been seeking more peace in my life. I don't know whether you have, but nature is a great way to do that. There's gardeners, y'all know that. So Dave's a Wisconsin guy, and I have historically
Southern by choice and the grace of God. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, but he can handle the cold. I have not historically been able to handle the cold, and so he got me a camera for Christmas, a couple Christmases ago, and I found this camo snowmobile suit that my dad had that he never used, and so I started putting on this camo snowmobile suit and with my camera and going out, and I fell in love with birding, and this particular bird is probably the very first cool bird picture I got. And I don't know if you can tell, but it's got some mimicry going there. It looks like a puppy dog on the back with the little eyes and the nose. And so I learned from this process to kind of be open to adapting and to doing what it takes to, I mean, I can do the cold now. You know, I just needed a snowmobile suit, you know, so sometimes...
All the way down to 40 degrees.
I can relate.
And really, I'm still getting overwhelmed. And to remember that you're being healed while you're healing your property, while you're healing nature and the earth. You're being healed in the process and being open to that. And I just started to document the stuff that I was learning. And so I really recommend keeping a journal of, you know, what worked in your garden, what didn't work, what did you learn from it, what kind of insights can you gain from it?
I think one of the important parts of being gardeners, and this took, you know, I've been organic gardening since I was 12, but it took me a long time, in fact, in the last couple years to realize that the earth is basically a palette, you know, or a canvas, thank you. And, you know, we have this palette of seeds and plants and all that kind of thing, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but sometimes we get so wrapped up in this rose bush has to go here, and if it's not successful here, then I'm a loser, right? And with Marnie, we've really discovered, you know, to adapt and embrace that this cold, you know, may be uncomfortable, but it serves a purpose. This clay junk over here that I can't grow anything that I want to grow into really serves a purpose. I just have to figure out what it is. And so when we look at gardening that way, we're not only able to adapt, but we're able to learn, right? And to Marnie's point, the more we document, then the more we can say, oh, I remember the last time that something like this happened, and I did this and this and this, and it didn't work. And now I don't have to spend, you know, 2 months figuring out that this isn't going to work.
This is just an experience that I had when we were in Sedona. I don't know if you know anything about Sedona, but
Yep.
yeah, the red rocks and everything. And it's supposed to be like energy vortexes, and so we went back in November. We were like, let's go to all these energy vortexes. Let's see what they're like. You know, what's the deal? So there's one, the airport Mesa has a really good view, And I sat down on this slab and I put my hands down there. And I was just kind of, okay, it's supposed to be a inspirational place, so I was like saying a prayer while I was there. And as I did, it felt almost like God was saying, Mother Earth's got something to tell you. Listen to what Mother Earth's got to say. And as I sat there, I felt this overwhelming sadness. Like Mother Earth was sad. That all of her, and I saw a flash in my mind of people sitting at computers and working on, watching television and with their phones, and it was like, I can heal you, but you've got your head intact so much that you're not getting the healing that I'm trying to give you. And then I realized that she had an intelligence. There was kind of this intelligence in her. She may not be a human, might not be our brand of intelligence, but she's an intelligent creature that God has created. And then I thought, we really see her as helpless. Like we've got to fix her. Like she's got a broken nuclear reactor, or something, and we've got to fix that. But in this little thing, as I was sitting there, it was like, she wants to partner with us, and the Creator wants to partner with us, and if we would work together with the earth, then a lot of these problems, we would have more peace, we would have more healing of ourselves and of the earth. And I realized she's the remedy. Have you all ever, like stinging nettle? You know how stinging nettle on fire, But it's got a medicine to it, it is good for certain things. But usually growing near it will be Gallant Soldier. I'm kind of getting into ahead here, but Gallant Soldier is the remedy to stinging nettle. And I kind of saw that sometimes we're a lot like stinging nettle to the earth, We're causing problems and everything, mankind, not us in this room, we don't, but she's the Gallant Soldier. She's the healing remedy that's right there for us outside our doors.
This is the old woman, not her. This is the old woman. She's a pre-Civil War oak tree. She was about 16 years old when the Battle of Chickamauga happened across the creek. So she's been around for a while. We call her the old woman of the woods. And when I first got on the property about 5 years ago, I was kind of like Andrew Jackson, going through the brambles and the bushes and going to places where rabbits couldn't go, and all of a sudden I knew she was there because I could see her crown, but I couldn't get to her trunk, and literally I kind of walked into her trunk because she was so crowded with all this other stuff. And she on our property has kind of become symbolic, I think, of nature and the conduit that we can have to the Creator. And when we first started working on the property, I got a feeling very much of if you help me, I'm going to help you. It's a symbiotic relationship that we have, that we can develop with nature. And I remember one time I was just cleaning up some stuff around her, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude from her and from the earth that I was taking care of the property and taking care of her, not in a stewardship way, not of a nice little earth, I'm going to take care of you, but really a partnership. Okay. And she was literally, there was so much privet around her and so many brambles, she was suffocating. She was getting smothered. And as I cleared that out, you could feel the energy around her and on the property. You have some nodding heads here. You've had that happen, and it's like the first time that happens, it's like, I was not expecting that. And it makes you just want to go out and weed. Which is very weird, but okay. So this leads us then to the parable of pulling privet. Everybody laughs. Privet is a non-native invasive species. I did not know that. I came down to Georgia. The Yankee came down to Georgia and he was looking for some land to steal or something. And here I was, and I'm walking around and the privet's blooming, and it's really pretty, and it smells okay. And so I'm going around saying, oh, here's a little privet plant. I'm going to dig it up and transplant it. And I'm transplanting all over the place. And then I start reading about, my dad says, hey, you have to look at this book on Bringing Nature Home by Doug Talman. One of the first things they talk about is privet is bad. Okay. So I then got on a mission to pull privet, and I was pulling privet, and there are many techniques I've learned about pulling privet. For example, George rain is awesome because it rains like crazy. I lived in Seattle for 25 years. I don't care. I go out in the rain and you grab privet and you pull it in the rain and it pops out. And it's like, that's cool. But the amazing thing happened was there's about 100 feet along our driveway that was 10 feet deep of privet. It had overgrown. And I started to get, that's where I started. I just started pulling it out, or I'd cut it down if it was too thick. And I thought, I don't know what I'm gonna plant in here, but gotta get rid of the privet. The cool thing was, and which I didn't realize at the time, is that privet will suffocate and poison anything around it. So I pulled it out, thought, I don't know what I'm gonna plant there, but whatever. The next year I went out and I noticed all these plants. And there were 27 different native plants that were growing there. Wildflowers, bushes, and trees that had always been there. The seed bank was always there, but they couldn't survive because the privet was, killing them out. And the other thing I noticed when I moved to the property is like, there's no birds, there's no butterflies, there's no bees, there's no nothing going on. And I wasn't doing pesticides or anything like that. And I couldn't figure it out. Pull the privet, native plants come up, all of a sudden, boom, there's all these birds all over the place. We've got butterflies and all this, pollinators are flying all over the place. So it was just an amazing thing and then sometimes our lives are like that. They get so involved in doing things. And sometimes you have to pull the privet out of your own life and just allow what's there to bubble up to the surface and can be. When I lived in Seattle, I had a couple of friends that were, well, many friends, but a couple in particular. One is a totem pole carver. He's Tlingit native, Alaskan native. And they have a tradition of, they will plant cedar trees in a circle. It's called a sacred cedar circle. And they'll do meditations and that type of thing. And my brother had reached out, who still lives out in the Seattle area, and he said, you have eastern cedar, they're technically juniper, but we'll just go with that. And you should plant some cedars and in a circle, and then, in 20 or 30 years, you'll have these cedar trees and it'll be this cool circle. So I'm walking around looking for these little cedar saplings and in the property, and one day I just am kind of looking around and I look up and I notice that there's a circle there. And I look around and I'm standing in the middle of a circle, cedar circle. It's all right there. But it's really tight and I wanted something that was bigger. So I'm demanding, so that if there's one, there's going to be more. So I started walking around with this new perspective of, okay, here's some cedar trees, and I'm looking up. And when I see that big circle up there, then I start looking around and saying, okay, what's here? And of course there's some privet in the middle of it, so I'm yanking that out. And now we have this, basically a cedar circle that was there all the time. I just had to find it. And that's sometimes a lot of what we have to do with gardeners is find things that are there already. And just work with what you have instead of trying to, again, going back to the Romans versus the Celts. The Romans are like, we have to rip apart this stuff and we have to make everything obey us. And the culture is just like, no, we're late. I'm inherently lazy. Let's just do what's there. Okay.
And one point I wanted to make about what he said is come from old school. My dad liked to run bulldozers and land things, and he just comes in and, just tear everything up. And we had things that were growing that I thought, we just need to mow that stuff over or whatever. And he's like, no. So he went to this almost like a cataloging type thing, and started to catalog what was already there. And in the process, we discovered that we had a lot of really cool things, but we had to let them grow and be a little chaotic for a while to be able to find the goodies that were there. And I talked to you about the stinging nettle, but the Native Americans basically believed that your remedy was in your environment. So like if somebody was sick, and you called for the medicine woman or medicine man, whatever, they'd show up, but they didn't necessarily bring their whole pharmacy with them. They would look or talk to you, find out what your symptoms were, and then look in your environment because they believed that your remedy was growing right outside. So this is something we've been playing with a lot. I've started using a lot of these plants in teas, or I cured a UTI that would not go away with the stuff in my yard. You know, just researched and made a tea that I drank every couple hours and then knocked it out.
And Georgia Joy gives a really good,
Yeah, she
been
does.
to some of her presentations.
Yeah,
She does a really good job.
So basically, if the message of that parable there is that your answers are all around you. You know, just open your eyes and look, and they may be coming from a direction you didn't think that you would expect.
Yeah, it's me. So one day, Marnie never gets sick, and she was sick. I mean, she was down for the count. And I was like, well, okay, I'm dying. There's a couple of aspirin saying that. And I went outside and I was working in the yard, and she was like, I'm gonna sleep, you know, until they don't have to anymore. And I was working out in the yard, and there was this weird flower that I'd never seen before. I mean, it wasn't there the day before. It was right next to my rose bushes, and it popped up, and I was like, okay, I don't know what this is. There's a plant app on my phone called PlantNet. It's free. Take a picture, and you look, and you see what it is. And it came up that it was this bee balm. And so I'm thinking, okay, I wonder what bee balm does, because it wasn't here yesterday. So I looked, and you can make a tea out of it, and it's a tea for fever and flu and basically every symptom that she had. So I went in and I mixed it with a little bit of mint, some peppermint that we had growing. Yeah, and mullein too. And went in and I said, here's this tea, and I promise that, you know, here's the Wikipedia article. It's not going to kill you. Just try it. And she was like, and an hour later she was up and she was like, I'm good, I'm ready to go. And it was just, and that was like the first time that we'd seen that immediacy happen. And it really kind of shifted our thinking to saying, okay, what is it we have on this property? This lady here, a Native American from around Seattle. Everything on the earth has a purpose, every disease and herb to cure it, and every person a mission. This is the Indian, the Native American theory of existence. And I love that, because then again, you're getting into Dave has a mission, and the bee balm has a purpose, and the cedars have a purpose, and we just have to figure out what they are.
When he first moved onto the property, there were a bunch of crown beard, a big patch of crown beard, and that's crazy crown beard. And I was like, I'll just mow that out, mow that over, make it grass. This is before I believed in wildflowers or native plants or anything.
And I'm going,
He's like, no, it's wildflowers, we can't do anything with it. So we just left it there. And then in our front yard, we tried to create a labyrinth, you know, and we were gonna make it a path with flowers. And so we went in and we planted a bunch of stuff. Well, we live on a limestone slab, and there's probably that much dirt, you know, on that part of the property. And it just didn't work. It was just a waste of time and money. And so one day I was just sitting by that old woman of the woods, the oak tree there, and I had this flash pop into my mind of a spiral cut into that crown beard patch. So it was already there. Instead of fighting it or ripping it out, make a path within it. So we put a spiral in, and I went in with, I just put my cardboard, you know, down to weed block it. And then we had wood chips that we got from a local tree company that just wanted to get rid of them, and put that in. And it became kind of a meditative process for me. So for about an hour or two every day, in the morning before it got hot, I would get out there and put this thing down. And I was meditating and praying while I was doing it. It was an enjoyable experience, even though it was a redundant task. It became something really quite beautiful. And in the end, it turned out really well. So for me, a lot of times it's catching the vision of something, we were going to leave town one time for the summer, a block of the summer, I knew my garden would be a weed bed by the time we got back. And again, I had a flash of, okay, put that cardboard down and that mulch in there, and I could just see my plant's big with that cardboard and the mulch. And so we worked like crazy a couple days before we left town, put the plants in, left for 2 weeks, came back, and it was just like I saw it. So for me, it's like catch the vision of it, and that propels me into action to know what to do. And Dave's really good about it. If I give him a vision of something and telling me like, okay, let's do it.
She's like the conduit, because as soon as she tells me, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that.
And he just starts working.
Which is a good life lesson, man. If your wife has an idea, good idea. Can we back up on this too? Or maybe you were going to talk. No, go ahead. You talk about this.
So anyway, that cranberry originally was like, you couldn't get in there to really enjoy it. It was, inaccessible. And so the very first day I sat down, when we finished it, I sat in the center, and a hummingbird flew, just hovered right in front of my face. And then there were butterflies everywhere. So now we can access and see the birds and the butterflies and everything, and enjoy the other plants. And there's other things that grow in there as well, besides just the crown beard a lot of goldenrod.
Yeah, and it was cool because literally there was a space of about almost as big as the library, and the only thing we could do is walk on the outside of it, and I could kind of, the crown beard's pretty high, the goldenrod's pretty high. I can see that there's some butterflies in there, but like she said, there's not any access, and the concept of getting into a meditative state and getting into there, cutting that spiral then. And the idea behind the spiral, and there's a Japanese garden concept too, that you raise the entrance to your garden if you have a path, and you raise it up with the idea that you're supposed to take that deliberate step. You're supposed to slow down instead of just coming in and, you want to slow down. And then the spiral, I could just cut across and get to those chairs in the middle, but instead I'm going to wander through, right? And that allows me then to say, oh, here's this thistle here, here's this butterfly over here, here's some blue wasps. Whoever hears of blue wasp, but we've got them here, and they're awesome. Well, there's one right there. And Cahill Gibran wrote the prophet back in the day. Give and take, for to the bee, a flower is a fountain of life, and to the flower, a bee is a messenger of love. And to both bee and flower, the giving and the receiving is a need and an ecstasy. And that's kind of what we've discovered as we've gardened, is if you read the Facebook post, garden can be a chore. You can sit there and you can pull and you can think about, I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. But what we've experienced in all of this is that it's become like she said, this wildflower spiral was a major project, but it became a meditation and a joyful connection with the earth and with the Creator, and just really almost a fountain of peace. And I mean, it was just, I can't tell you how many times we've been like,
One of the other things that I have learned as I've gone through this process is how to quiet my mind and how to feel more peace and more joy on a daily basis, and joy in the little things, the beauties within nature and everything. And this photo I took on Mud Creek in Winneconne, Wisconsin. Dave is a master canoeer, so he took me out on this Mud Creek where his father lives. And you'll notice that it's a reflection of the sun and the clouds and everything and the cattails. And this is a really muddy, mucky, I mean, if you fell in it, you'd be like, gross, right? It's really, and yet this reflection is so perfect. And it really struck me that we don't have to be perfect, we just need to be still and allow God to reflect whatever he wants to reflect to us or through us in the process. So just getting still, getting quiet, really enjoying the nature and being observant. And it can help you connect with that stillness inside of you. Inside of you is a place of stillness and wisdom and insight. And that's sacred inside of you. And as you slow down and really enjoy nature, it's going to bring that out for you as well. That's what I talk about in my book, is just finding that peace and the joy that's down in there that a lot of times the world gets in the way and crowds that out.
That's pretty much it. We hope that this is not your typical garden talk.
Metaphysical gardening.
Yeah. But, what's the objective to gardening? I think we could all agree, we like eating the spinach, right? Even if we don't let our husbands have it. But don't you just love getting the dirt and feeling it? Don't you just love, and I've just come to enjoy so much listening and finding out and saying, and having basically my land tell me, and I don't think, I talked to my daughter who lives in an apartment, a townhouse in Seattle. She's got, that much earth, right? But it doesn't matter, because what is that space? What is the earth? What is that pot telling you that it wants to do or wants to be or wants to have in it? And when we become that partner with the earth, then I think that we can really start to learn things that we kind of weren't expecting to learn. I know that I've learned a lot in the last year or two. That I was a good gardener, I really was, but this is different.
So I've got a book on finding peace in a turbulent world, which is kind of the insights of what we gain from nature. And it has a journal that goes with it, and I made these are the photography stuff. So like, for example, a raven, and on the back it has like a Bible verse that goes with it, and what ravens can teach us, and they have like little positive affirmations on them. They're just kind of fun ways to start to learn the symbolism and the idea that Christ always spoke in parables, and he's still speaking in parables. And nature all around us is one I would say one giant parable, but it's a bazillion parables. So it's just kind of gets you thinking about what are the parables and the things that you're seeing around you.
The Celts talk about having a big book of scripture and a little book of scripture. And the little book of scripture is the scriptures that we know, the Old and New Testament. Physically little. And the big book of scriptures is you walk outside, you gain that. And like I said, when we were first asked to give this presentation, these books weren't in existence. It's kind of like, Marnie's like a great amalgamator. She's like one of these Tetris people that just can sit there and say, well, you connect this and you add this and do this, and then the oak tree was doing this, and what about this bee butterfly here and this wasp, and all of a sudden she's got this meditative book. I'm like, okay, I think we can talk about something different. So one of the things that was stunning to me that Marnie's going to try to pull up was I felt like every day I'd walk out and I'd say, I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. And pretty soon you're just standing like this. So, like I said, she's the great amalgamator, right? We're both writers. I write haiku, and she writes practical things. And she said, why don't you create a spreadsheet? And as a writer, creating a spreadsheet is like, I hate that, right? But I will tell you, Again, listen to your wife. She's got good ideas. This was the biggest help for me. Because I would go through and I would say, okay, if you scrolled up, it would say, what's the priority and what are the dates? For example, I'm coming up on, I have to take Bradford pear invasive species. I can graft those and put Bartlett pears and Asian pears and fruit and take that rootstock from Bradford pear, which normally you just pull out, and I now have fruit trees growing. But that only can happen within a space of like 2 or 3 months, so I have to do that now. So these are things that I'm saying, okay, and every once in a while you'll see a honeydew thing, clean up north side of the house. Because I've got a bunch of wood up there.
Still on there.
But as I went through, then if you scroll down to the blue and whatever colors those are all the things that I've completed. And again, this allows me to go through and say, okay, I not only do I know what I need to do and how much time it's going to take roughly, but then at the end I got to say, the stuff we did, this is a lot. And actually, you're on the list, and I can check off this thing. Because she brought me some blueberry plants. We did kind of a plant exchange, and that's been on for, I don't know, months. But now it's a thing I can check off. So this was very helpful, even though it doesn't seem very poetic. So
Practical meets the spiritual.
yeah.